How do you balance all of the requirements of being a CEO? Is there one aspect of your job that demands more of your time than most areas?
Aside from lunch, which is very important to me, all kidding aside, I think when you think of it, it certainly is a balancing act, and we all are given the same amount of time. And so I think a critical piece is to reflect on what are the things that you and only you can affect, regardless of your role, whether you're CEO, whether you're a director of a certain department, or whatever assignment you may have. There are certain things that you and only you can influence. And I'll use a physician, for example. So if a physician is spending a lot of their time doing documentation that does not require a physician, then they are not practicing at the top of their medical license. If they're spending the majority of their time interacting with patients, providing care, writing prescriptions, doing things that they and only they can do, then they are practicing at the top of their license. I think you can think of administrative and other roles in the same way. And so there are certain things that a CEO can alone do. Make certain decisions that influence the way the organization is structured, goals that are set, culture and climate. So I say all that to end up with sort of a blueprint in terms of, well, how should I spend my time? I still have to balance my time and my priorities, but it should be starting with the answer, and the answer must include what are the things that are most important that I do, so that at the end of a day or a week or a year, you can look back and say, we made the right progress and I focused on the right things in my job.
Okay. Do you feel like there's any one particular area of your job that demands more time than another?
I think interacting with individual leaders and from a coaching perspective and development perspective and alignment perspective. And I think about in terms of stakeholders, leaders who are really running the shop, really doing the work, and making sure that there's mutual exchange in terms of feedback, in terms of alignment around priorities and how we're doing compared to how we want to do. So again, coaching aspect, I think the second key stakeholder group I think about, and this is not necessarily in order, would be medical staff. It's really, really important that medical staff feel that administration understands them, their needs, and that there is excellent access and communication with administration. And the CEO happens to hold an office that is most symbolic with respect to accessibility to medical staff and communication and alignment. And historically, you see, misalignment where you have the medical staff feeling like they're us and administration is them. And the only way to overcome that is to have regular, ongoing, and open communication and dialogue. I'd say a third key stakeholder group that's really important for me to focus on as a CEO is the board of trustees. The board is ultimately accountable for the organization's performance, its goals, its progress, etc. And so a lot of my time is dedicated towards not just board relations, but in terms of key decisions that have to be made, and in terms of what information really needs to be shared with the board so that they are informed and the board can feel like they're doing their job. I spent a lot of time thinking about that and communicating with board officers and that sort of thing. So I think it's a very, very important group as well. And I think fourth, and certainly not last and maybe first, would be our patients. And so I try to round several times a week, and I love interacting with staff. I think it's fun, I think it's enjoyable, and I think I also learn a lot about what's really going on in a particular area based on the climate that is palpable one way or the other when you walk onto a unit. And if they view you as approachable, then you're going to hear a lot. It can be beneficial. But I think patients ultimately is probably the most important stakeholder group, and I really enjoy meeting patients. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I was having a meeting with one of our providers, and we were resolving some concerns. And I learned through the conversation that her mother was a patient at the hospital. And so at the end of the meeting, I asked her if her mother would be up for a visit. And I had a delightful conversation with her mom, got to hear about her experience, which thankfully was exceptional. And she's having a great recovery in addition to just an overall great experience as a patient. That is, I think, the most rewarding. And It may be in reflection of where I kind of got started in healthcare, was as a medical unit secretary. And so I was on the front lines of patient care on a medical unit in a hospital, St. Mary's in Athens, Georgia. And I got to see really what it took from a team perspective to deliver great care. But I interact with patients all the time. So right away, my first job in healthcare, I appreciated that we're all here for one reason and one reason alone, ultimately, and that is to care for people. So I think that's the way I think about how I spend my time, and where I need to spend the most of it is around those key stakeholder groups.